Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One way to try to understand absorption in chanting Hare Krishna is, don't ask me where it is, but Prabhupada said that just like when there's sex, agitation, you can't think of anything else. It's like you can't think of anything. All you can think of is this, what's going on, the stimulation that's going on. You can't think of anything else. It's so powerful and all-absorbing. Sex arousal. Well, absorption in chanting Hare Krishna is even more powerful than that. And becoming fully absorbed in Krishna, you can't think of anything else. So all you can think of is Krishna. Experiencing consciousness of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. It's funny. Earlier today, I was reading. See, I'm trying to practice Krishna consciousness by hearing and chanting. How revolutionary! And we were reading about the killing of Dinakasura, who's a demon. And Dinakasura was in the Taliban forest, which was a very beautiful place. And the description of the Taliban forest is really, really delightful. Birds are singing, and the flowers, and the aroma of the fruits and the trees, and it's just a really delightful atmosphere. But no one could go there because there was a demon in there, and he wouldn't let anybody in there. He would kill. Whoever went in there, he would kill. So they weren't even, So everyone had left, there was nobody in there. The demon was there. So I was out chanting today out in the back, doing some japa, and it was kind of like the first spring day, where I've actually heard crickets, and there was some kind of tree frog or something going, And immediately my mind went to what I'd read this morning about the beautiful atmosphere where Krishna is. It's all about. And I didn't do it on purpose, it just happened. And my mind just went there immediately to the description of Krishna and Balaram, the cowherd boys in the Taliban forest. And I just started laughing. And then I started crying. So I was laughing and crying and laughing and crying. And the tree frogs going, ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. And the crickets are going, crickety, crickety, crickety. And the more they were doing that, the more I was laughing and then crying and then laughing and crying. So become absorbed in Krishna. Become fully absorbed in Krishna like that. This is what we want in our practice in Krishna consciousness. We want this. We want to become fully absorbed in Krishna. And then everything reminds us of Krishna, not necessarily in just some passive way, but in an intense way, like when you remember, you start laughing or you start crying or something. This is what we want. We want this. Because it has to be like that so that all we think of is Krishna. Otherwise, we're going to think of other stuff. And that won't help us at the time of death. It won't help us. So we're preparing to go there. So it was an interesting experience this afternoon. Totally out of the blue. It just happened like that. So I just wanted to share that. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. See, it won't do it for me, just I get together at somebody's house once a month or once a week even. It's not going to do it for me. I've got to be like 24 hours. I've got 24 hours. I've got to be. It's just, it's the way I am. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Shri Vamsavi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. So we're going to chant a little bit and then going to hear about subduing Kāliya. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Name Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sanyavadi Astacharya Satayane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paramahansa Asa Saraswati Shri Sriman His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Vanchikalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhyamcha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha. Okay, so this is chapter 16, Krishnabha, summary study of the 10th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, by His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Okay. When he understood that the water of the Yamuna was being polluted by the black serpent Kāliya, Lord Krishna took action against him and made him leave the Yamuna and go elsewhere, and thus the water became purified. When this story was being narrated by Sukadeva Goswami, Maharaj Parikshit became eager to hear more about Krishna's childhood pastimes. He inquired from Sukadeva Goswami how Krishna chastised Kāliya, who was living in the water for many years. Actually, Maharaj Parikshit was becoming more and more enthusiastic to hear the transcendental pastimes of Krishna, and his inquiry was made with great interest. Sukadeva Goswami narrated the story as follows. Within the river Yamuna there was a great lake, and in that lake the black serpent Kāliya used to live. Because of his poison, the whole area was so contaminated that it emanated a poisonous vapor 24 hours a day. If a bird happened to even pass over the spot, he would immediately fall down in the water and die. Due to the poisonous effect of the Yamuna's vapors, the trees and grass near the bank of the Yamuna had all dried up. Lord Krishna saw the effect of the great serpent's poison. The whole river that ran before Vrindavan was now deadly. Krishna, who had vented himself just to kill all undesirable elements in the world, immediately climbed up on a big kadamba tree on the bank of the Yamuna. The kadamba is a round yellow flower, generally seen only in the Vrindavan area. After climbing to the top of the tree, he tightened his belt cloth, and flapping his arms just like a wrestler, jumped in the midst of the poisonous lake. The kadamba tree from which Krishna had jumped was the only tree which was not dead. Some commentators say that due to touching the lotus feet of Krishna, the tree became immediately alive. In some other Puranas, it is stated that Garuda, the eternal carrier of Vishnu, knew that Krishna would take this action in the future, so he put some nectar on this tree to preserve it. When Lord Krishna jumped into the water, the river overflooded its banks, as if something very large had fallen into it. This exhibition of Krishna's strength is not at all uncommon, because he is the reservoir of all strength. When Krishna was swimming about, just like a great strong elephant, he made a tumultuous sound, which the black serpent Kāliya could hear. The tumult was intolerable for him, and he could understand that this was an attempt to attack his home. Therefore, he immediately came before Krishna. Kāliya saw that Krishna was indeed worth seeing, because his body was so beautiful and delicate. Its color resembled that of a cloud, and his legs resembled a lotus flower. He was decorated with Srivatsa jewels and yellow garments. He was smiling with a beautiful face and was playing in the river Yamuna with great strength. But, in spite of Krishna's beautiful features, Kāliya felt great anger within his heart, and thus he grabbed Krishna with his mighty coils. Seeing the incredible way in which Krishna was enveloped in the coils of the serpent, the affectionate cowherd boys and inhabitants of Vrindavan immediately became stunned out of fear. They had dedicated everything to Krishna. Their lives, property, affection, activities, everything was for Krishna. And when they saw him in that condition, they became overwhelmed with fear and fell down on the ground. All the cows, bulls, and small calves became overwhelmed with grief. They began to look at him with great anxiety. Out of fear, they could only cry in agony and stand erect on the bank, unable to help their beloved Krishna. While the scene was taking place on the bank of the Yamuna, there were ill omens manifest. The earth trembled, meteors fell from the sky, and the bodies of men shivered. All these are indications of a great immediate danger. Observing the inauspicious signs, the cowherd men, including Maharaj Nanda, became very anxious out of fear. At the same time, they were informed that Krishna had gone to the pasturing ground without his elder brother Balaram. As soon as Nanda and Yasoda and the cowherd men heard this news, they became even more anxious. Out of their great affection for Krishna, unaware of the extent of Krishna's potencies, they became overwhelmed with grief and anxiety because they had nothing dearer than Krishna, and because they dedicated their everything, life, property, affection, mind, activities, to Krishna. Because of their great attachment for Krishna, they thought, today Krishna is surely going to be vanquished. All the inhabitants of Vrindavan came out of the village to see Krishna. The assembly consisted of children, young and old men, women, animals, and all living entities. They knew that Krishna was their only means of sustenance. While this was happening, Balaram, who was the master of all knowledge, stood there simply smiling. He knew how powerful his younger brother Krishna was, and that there was no cause for anxiety when Krishna was fighting with an ordinary serpent of the material world. He did not therefore personally take part in their concern. On the other hand, all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, being disturbed, began to search out Krishna by following the impression of his footprints on the ground, and thus they moved towards the bank of the Yamuna. Finally, by following the footprints marked with flag, bow, and conch shell, the inhabitants of Vrindavan arrived at the riverbank and saw that all the cows and boys were weeping to behold Krishna enwrapped in the coils of the black serpent. Then they became still more overwhelmed with grief. While Balaram was smiling to see the lamentation, all the inhabitants of Brajabhumi merged into the ocean of grief because they thought that Krishna was finished. Although the residents of Vrindavan did not know much about Krishna, their love for him was beyond comparison. As soon as they saw that Krishna was in the river Yamuna, enveloped by the serpent Kāliya, and that all the boys and cows were lamenting, they simply began to think of Krishna's friendship, his smiling face, his sweet words, his dealings with them. Thinking of all these and believing that their Krishna was now within the clutches of Kāliya, they at once felt that the three worlds had become vacant. Lord Chaitanya also said that he was seeing the three worlds as vacant for want of Krishna. This is the highest stage of Krishna consciousness. All the inhabitants of Vrindavan had the highest ecstasy, love for Krishna. When Mother Yasoda arrived, she wanted to enter the river Yamuna, and being checked, she fainted. Other friends who were equally aggrieved were shedding tears like torrents of rain or waves of the river, but in order to bring Mother Yasoda to consciousness, they began to speak loudly about the transcendental pastimes of Krishna. Mother Yasoda remained still, as if dead, because her consciousness was concentrated on the face of Krishna. Nanda and all others who dedicated everything, including their lives, to Krishna, were ready to enter the waters of the Yamuna, but Lord Balaram checked them, because he was in perfect knowledge that there was no danger. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna